You're listening to the Naturally Noelle Show, brought to you by Noelle's Naturals, all natural products that really work. And now, please welcome entrepreneur, wife, homeschooling mom of 4, and founder of the Noelle's Naturals brand of products, your host, Noelle Talley.
Well, hello and welcome back to the show, friends. I'm so glad you're here. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday season. And, as we are entering in this, we're almost to the end of January now, but just, this first month of the year and just the newness and, wonder of what will be for the year ahead. I really just felt like this was a great opportunity to sit down with somebody who I personally have been following for a long time and really have just gained so much from. But we will be talking with Dr. Erin Ventoso today. Erin is a chiropractor and a hormonal health wellness coach, and she works with women every day, helping them just to kind of get to the bottom of their hormone issues and really just finding that root cause wellness. And so I'm really excited for you to get to know her today. We are talking specifically about adrenal health and the adrenal cocktail, which is a kind of fun new trend, and we've posted about it a bunch of times, and you guys have really had a lot of great feedback every time we post some of our adrenal cocktail recipes, and you guys seem to really be enjoying it. So we're going to talk a little bit about one of our new products, Adapt, which is really just a fantastic resource for you if you are having adrenal issues. So we will go into that, and if you have any questions about any of our products or you're interested in trying things out, definitely give us a follow on Instagram at Noelle's Naturals. We're also on Facebook, and then you can also just go directly to our websites, and all of our product listings have a ton of information, but we post lots and lots on our social media platforms as well. So you can go to noellsnaturals.com to check out any of these products, but I think you're going to love this show today. Here we go. Well, welcome to the show, Dr. Erin. I'm so glad to have you.
It's so good to be here.
Yeah, I know we've kind of been back and forth on trying to schedule a time to get together. And as much as I fight busyness just as a, personal practice, the holiday season swept me up and I ended up way busier than I wanted to be. And I mean, a lot of that is good busy, doing things that you enjoy, but doing too many things that you enjoy in a short period of time can kind of really get those stress hormones working overtime, right?
Oh yeah, that it definitely can. It's a great time to be around your family and do all of these really fun activities because everybody kind of has a break, but sometimes even with the break, we find things to keep us busy. So it's a good thing, but also
it's also a good thing to reset and kind of like reboot after the new year and just kind of get back to that normal schedule and start to regulate again.
Oh yeah, it feels so good to be back and looking at your calendar or however you organize your life and be like, oh, this feels good.
Yes, I just got my new planner for the year and I sat down this morning and started to write out all my goals, and it felt very cleansing. I really needed it.
Oh yeah, I'm a big vision board girl myself, so
Yes. So I really want to talk to you about sort of how you got into your field. I know for you, it was a lot like what it was for me, and it came out of personal health issues and really not finding answers from conventional medicine and from people that you expected would be there to help you, but really kind of let you down. And I share that with you. And that really, so many of us have that story of just being like, you know what, I'm just going to take this into my own hands and kind of start researching and figuring this out.
Yeah, so ever since I even started having a cycle, I had a lot of symptoms of endometriosis. My mom had endometriosis. It was kind of like a genetic component, so it was just assumed that I did as well. And of course, the only thing that they could tell me at that point was to go on birth control, right? That's the thing that they tell everybody when you have all of these things going on and they don't really have answers. And I dealt with that for a very long time up until college. And I actually had a pretty serious injury in college when I was 20. I played college lacrosse and I was deadlifting and I completely blew out a disc in my back. And so I was having a lot of neurological symptoms. And because of where it was in the low back, I started having an increase in a lot of my period issues and hormonal issues as well. And I remember at 20 going into basically this surgeon's office, looking for help, looking for anything. And nobody up until that point had given me any indication of anything that I could do. And I walk into his office and I'm sitting there in a gown in this cold, sterile room with this older gentleman, no offense to older gentlemen out there, but an older gentleman sitting in front of me and basically saying, you have to do this surgery right now. You're not going to be able to hold a pregnancy full term. You're not going to be able to do really a lot of things that you want in life in terms of going back to sports and lifting and being mobile. And like, this is just where you're at is kind of where you're at. And that really propelled me into the thinking of, well, if I'm someone who this is happening to, it has to be happening to other women too. Luckily, something in my gut told me that I shouldn't go down that route. So I never did go through with the spinal surgery. I was supposed to have a fusion of like 3 vertebrae. And that never happened, thankfully. Just something told me. And I went and sought out other options. And that really opened my world to kind of the more holistic side of things and looking at the body as a whole and not really just a sum of its parts all together. Like every single thing in your body and every symptom is telling a story that is leading to something else. And I didn't really quite understand that until I was really faced with a hard, life-changing decision. Thus, I got into holistic health. I started getting off of birth control. I started naturally healing my body. When I got off of birth control, my body went into a spiral, and I developed something called autoimmune progesterone dermatitis. It's actually a pretty rare condition. So it took a very long time for anyone to even figure out what was going on in that realm too, both holistically and even just on the modern medicine side. But that's when I got into learning more about Dutch testing and really looking into my hormones and really understanding how my nervous system and my hormones are actually always talking to each other. And those are kind of the big foundations. And especially the nervous system is a huge foundation for overall health, but hormone health specifically.
As far as, your background and your training, where did that kind of lead you professionally?
So once I started when I had all of those spinal issues and I was having like a lot of nerve issues, I actually went to a chiropractor, and that was my first step into holistic health. And that was the first person who ever told me everything that he basically said, everything that you were previously told is not true. And like, I can prove it. And I'm like a stubborn 20-year-old. And I'm like, okay, then prove it. And he didn't. I don't have any lasting issues of that. And so that's kind of where I decided, again, if this is happening to me, it has to be happening to a lot of other women. And, I didn't really find myself in the conventional medicine side of things just because my thinking had changed so drastically. And I just decided I'm going to try to go to chiropractic school. I was in a graduate program at the time and I left and decided to pursue chiropractic instead, which was a really crazy turn of events. And I think my family thought that I was a little insane, but it all worked out for the better. But I went through there and then I did a lot of extra outside training to better understand women's health and hormones and the physiology, especially behind pregnancy and conception. So lots of outside sources as well on that, and lots of learning and immersion, and also real life things that happened to me too.
Mm-hmm. I think so many of us in this kind of like crunchy sphere can really relate to being ostracized when you begin to kind of go down a countercultural path and maybe people around you don't understand and they think you're crazy.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So, I talked with Dr. Jabin Moore in our last episode a lot about stress hormones and kind of how just like this busy lifestyle and chasing after success or whatever it is, just that mindset can really take its toll physiologically on the body. But I want to talk to you kind of specifically about that adrenal health piece, because I know that's something you talk a lot about on your Instagram page, which we will link in the show notes. You've got to follow her page because there's a ton of really good resources and information, and you can just learn so much. But talk to me about sort of like adrenal fatigue and if this is a real thing and what it looks like and what it means, particularly for women.
Yes. So I hear that all of the time. Is adrenal fatigue a real thing? And it's like, yes and no. I guess it is the best way to describe what's happening. And for me, yeah, it definitely is a real thing. Is it necessarily like explaining what's going on perfectly to a T? No, but this is kind of how we understand it and how the public understands it too. Just, it makes it so much easier to know what's going on. Because really what it is your brain talking to your adrenal glands. So that internal stress response, that HPA axis is just our internal stress response and how we are understanding the world. When, again, just like you were talking about, when we are chronically stressed and we are having all of the stimulation day in and day out, and unfortunately, some of it we really can't control. It's just the life that we are living in. I like to explain it essentially that it's kind of similar to how our body is with insulin resistance. So if we have any kind of blood glucose dysregulation and there's too much glucose in the blood, we also have too much insulin, and then the body starts ignoring the insulin and the signaling. The exact same thing happens when it comes to cortisol. The adrenal glands and all of the tissues that are going to respond to cortisol eventually just think that the body and the adrenal glands are crying wolf. And so they start to ignore it. So this doesn't necessarily mean that your adrenal glands have completely stopped working, which I think is the big thing that everybody is so worried about. It just means that they are not as supported as they should be. They are taxed, and so is the body. The body is trying to say, hey, I need the brain to stop telling the adrenal glands to do this, because if I'm getting way too much cortisol in my system, everything is going to go awry. We have so many of our downstream hormones that are impacted by cortisol that it can just create so much chaos within the body.
So, but cortisol is kind of a finicky thing because you need enough cortisol, right? So talk to me a little bit about that balance there.
Yes. So cortisol is not to be demonized either. So I always say that. I actually love cortisol because it's really great. We need it to get up and awake in the morning. It helps with immune regulation. It helps with blood sugar regulation. It helps our energy stay sustained throughout the day. So we do need cortisol. Within the first 2 hours of us waking in the morning, that's kind of when we want cortisol to be the most active. And then we want it to slowly go down. And that kind of goes into our natural circadian rhythm, right? So in the morning, cortisol is slowly rising as our melatonin, which keeps us asleep, is kind of going away. Cortisol is rising to do all of those amazing things that I was just talking about. So this is when the adrenal glands are supposed to be pumping that out, and our brain is supposed to say, okay, this is a good amount. And then it's slowly supposed to cascade down until melatonin comes back in and retakes over. The problem is that we don't necessarily have that happening. A lot of times, if I'm specifically even testing cortisol on the Dutch test in women, I see so many patterns that are flip-flopped where their cortisol is skyrocketing in the morning. And that could be because you wake up on 100, right? There's a lot of moms out there who wake up and they automatically are like, someone's crying, I have to get lunch together, I have to do this. That is a stressor that our brain is yelling at us about. So that's going to create that huge spike when in reality, we're not supposed to have that massive, massive spike. We also have blue light that we're constantly looking at, especially if you use your phone as your alarm clock. I sometimes do. So I'm not judging anybody for that. But that can create a lot of issues. And of course, so many habits that women get into when it comes to intermittent fasting and everything else. It just puts so much stress on that HPA axis and creates such a funky cycle for us.
Drinking coffee on an empty stomach.
That's a big one. Yes, yes. And I have gotten yelled at for that online so many times. I can't even tell you.
Yeah, I am such a big...
Yes, I'm a big stickler for that. In fact, I tell my husband like every day, I'm like, please just like grab a sandwich on your way out. Like I make little like egg cups. I throw them in the freezer to try to make it easier for him. I'm like, please do not do this. We've talked about this in previous podcasts, but please tell us again why that is kind of like the big no-no.
Yes. So everybody is always talking about it in terms of like intermittent fasting, but like we are technically intermittent fasting. Like when we're going to sleep, right? We are fasting for a prolonged period of time. And if you are someone who eats earlier in the evening, then you're fasting for even longer. But essentially, if you already have a dysregulated cortisol response and you're drinking coffee on an empty stomach, our body is assuming whatever is coming in first is supposed to break that fast. It's supposed to replenish the nourishments and the energy resources like glucose and everything else that we lose overnight. And if you are just pumping yourself with caffeine, that is a stimulant. It's going to stimulate that HPA axis. It can increase your cortisol very rapidly because there's nothing else in your system to stop that from happening, right? It's just going straight into the stomach, right into the bloodstream, and it is going to give your brain that hit, which is why so many people feel so much energy in the morning when they do that. And it might not be the caffeine. Yes, a little bit, obviously, but a lot of it is cortisol too, and your body is then relying on cortisol instead of other things as its main fuel source, which can then create blood glucose dysregulation. And honestly, that sets you up for poor blood glucose dysregulation throughout the entire rest of your day for every other meal, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah. So you've mentioned the Dutch test a couple times, which you post a ton about on your page as well. Explain to me what that is and kind of how that works. Do you do it at different times during the day? Do you do it at, a month apart? How does that kind of work?
Yes. So there's a couple different tests that you can do. There's just depending on what's going on with the person, you can do a full cycle mapping. You can also do one that is both urine and salivary. But what essentially Dutch stands for is dried urine testing for comprehensive hormones. So it actually gives us so much information and a total look at kind of what's going on with the hormones, both kind of how you're making them, how you are processing them. It's also looking at some organic acids and cortisol, that pattern that I was just speaking on of how you're supposed to have a very gradual spike in the morning and then it's supposed to come down. We can see that on there too. So we can look at both urine and saliva for that. And that is kind of the most reliable when it comes to cortisol, is pairing those two together. But it's really great because you can do this testing in the comfort of your own home, and urine gives us so much more information than what blood would, just because of the way your body is processing it and the metabolites that we're actually able to pull and see in that test.
So does it matter what time of the day you do it?
So you will do it, the most simple one, you can do it, there's 2 samples at nighttime, and then they have an overnight sample for my people who wake up in the middle of the night, whether you have a kid or you just have to go to the bathroom. And then there is 2 morning samples, one right when you wake up and then one about 2 hours after. So we can really collect and see what's going on, one with the hormones, but also gives us a little bit of the cortisol metabolites and what's going on with that as well.
Let's sort of shift gears a little bit and talk about solutions. So, if someone's able, and you do provide one-on-one services, right?
Yes. Yep.
So that's something that we'll put all of the links and everything to get in touch with you. If anyone is hearing all of this and thinking, I need help and this would be great. And honestly, like, your prices are very reasonable. I know there's a lot of really great practitioners out there, but it's really just not doable for a lot of women. And that's really unfortunate because, we don't want to have this sort of like classist thing for wellness. And, that's kind of just, this is like my little side soapbox for just a moment, if you would indulge me.
Yes,
I see so many people in the natural community wearing these like beautiful organic cotton linen gowns that are like $350. And I'm like, listen, not all of us have that kind of budget. And it's really sad that it feels like you have to be rich to be healthy. And that's frustrating. So I very much appreciate that you do not have like through the roof prices. So if you're hearing this thinking I will never be able to afford it, I think you'd be surprised I like that. Thank you for that.
Yes. And thank you for saying that, because that's something that's really important to me too. I want to make, if it bothers me that this isn't something that's so accessible to women, because me personally, I think this should be available to everyone. I think that Dutch testing and working with a provider who understands you should be something that all of us have access to, and especially in the US. Like, this is something that I think should be second nature, and it's not. And I struggle with that myself, because yes, I am a provider, but you can't always be objective when it comes to your own stuff too. So I try to be really mindful of that. And I know that when I was on my struggle, I was a broke college kid. I was in chiropractic school. I couldn't afford any crazy amount of things. And even still now, I live in Northern Virginia, so it's expensive.
Yeah. Well, and because, for holistic health, this is not usually going to be something that's covered by insurance. So you're going to be out of pocket, and these tests can really add up. And, there's a lot of really cool testing out there that can be very comprehensive, and that's great. But, at $400, $500, $600, $800 a pop, that can really just be kind of cost prohibitive for most families. So off my soapbox now.
I agree with you, so I love it.
Okay, good. So let's kind of talk about some of the solutions. And so you've had your Dutch test done, and now you're kind of understanding what your numbers are looking like a little bit. And maybe we are having some dysregulation and some cortisol issues and some signs of that adrenal fatigue. What is sort of the road to healing with that?
So it looks a little bit different for everybody, obviously, but in general, I find myself going back to the same foundations with everybody. And the first one is kind of very easy, the light training. And everybody, whenever I say that, they're like, I can't afford a red light therapy machine. And I'm like, you don't have to, because we have something called the sun, and it's free. I absolutely love that. Even if it is turning the screen on your phone completely red. So there is a setting that you can do that too, but I keep my red screen on to really block the blue light all the way through from 5 p.m. when it gets dark here until when I'm up in the morning. So keeping that blue light blocked from 30 minutes to an hour. If you can do it at sundown, that's even better. Blocking that blue light is key, especially from the nighttime all the way into the morning.
Is that an app, or is that something I had no idea about this. This is amazing.
Yes, it is. I'll show you a little snippet really quickly so you can see.
Oh my gosh. Okay. You guys can't see this, but
she's showing her phone.
Yeah, but that's really cool. It's all red.
Yes. And it is a setting on the iPhone. So it's not an app. They naturally have it, and I can click the side button 3 times. I never remember exactly how to do it, but I will make sure to send it to you so you can at least put it in the show notes for people to be able to do it.
Absolutely. And I'm sure a quick, online search can give anyone anything they need to know.
If you Google iPhone red screen, you'll find it.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, but doing that is huge, and that has been a game changer for me, especially if you aren't able to invest in red light glasses or a red light therapy machine. That is huge. So doing that, keeping it on at least 30 minutes when you wake up as well. So I do it from 5 p.m., 30 minutes until I've been awake and I've had breakfast and everything else. So I give my body some time to adjust to that. And of course, waking up in the morning, you can also open your windows. I know it's a little chilly right now, or just go outside, depending on where you're at and where you're living. But getting that first sunlight instead of the blue light into your eyes is going to be huge. So circadian rhythm training is a huge thing that actually really promotes that cortisol awakening response, that very slow cortisol rise that's supposed to happen in the morning. That actually promotes a very healthy circadian rhythm and a cortisol awakening response. So that's one of the first things that I think everyone should be doing to start managing their cortisol levels. And next is nervous system regulation, which I've talked about a lot, but of course your adrenal glands are part of your nervous system. They have your internal stress response is working with one another. And so that's something that should always be addressed, whether that is with meditation or EFT tapping, breath work. Finding what works for you is key. I'm not a very good meditator myself. It's funny because I have an Oura ring, so I can track all of that, and my body just does not do well with meditation, but I do great with EFT tapping. So that's a really big thing that I am into right now, and I absolutely love, and I think is great for you to just kind of go in and explore and see what works best for you.
Yes, and there's actually an app, I believe it's called EFT Solution, and it's either free or very low cost, but I got that for my husband was going through just some really stressful things with work. And we were moving, and it was like a crazy thing about 2 years ago. And I was like, let's just try this EFT thing and just see how it goes. And I was very surprised at how effective it is. So a quick search in the App Store, and I'm sure you can find it, but it will just guide you through different locations of tapping, and it's really, really easy.
Yeah, it's so easy, and so easy that you think it's not going to work, but it does.
Yes.
The next big proponent is blood sugar balance, and that is a whole nother episode in itself that I can get into, but just really prioritizing protein when you are sitting down for meals or snacks. That's kind of the best advice that I can give in like an overall sense. That is going to really help with your cortisol, because cortisol and blood sugar go hand in hand together. And lastly is leaning into adaptogenic herbs when you need to. Try not to make supplements like medication to say, I have this going on, I need this supplement. I don't always go that route, but if your body has been struggling for a really long time, it needs some help. So giving yourself that leeway to give your body the ability to actually sit back and heal by utilizing herbs and supplements, why not do that? We have that at our disposal, which I think is amazing.
Yes. So, and that gives me a great kind of leeway into talking about our product Adapt, which we sent to you before this just to see what you thought about it. And honestly, like, we haven't even really talked a whole lot about how you feel about it. So we're just going to get kind of a really honest review. But we did formulate this for the purpose of using with an adrenal cocktail. And you can kind of explain a little bit about what the adrenal cocktail is, because I know that's been really popular lately. Even friends that I have that are not particularly crunchy are like, oh yeah, adrenal cocktails are all the rage. So first, let's kind of like dive into what that is and how it helps. And then we can kind of talk about the herbs a little bit in a bit.
Yes. Yeah, sounds good. So an adrenal cocktail is essentially just this combination of a few things that are going to be very nourishing for your adrenal glands. So there's a lot of nutrients and different aspects of that are actually very supportive of the adrenal glands. There's no, I'm using air quotes since nobody could see me, but science in terms of the adrenal cocktail as a whole and what it does. And what I mean by that is just scientific studies that everybody likes to really lean on and bring to the forefront. But there are so many components of it that are actually extremely nourishing and great for the adrenal glands. So the components of the adrenal cocktail, a majority of them are a juice with vitamin C. So orange is kind of the biggest one that everybody talks about, but you can also do pineapple and other citrus juices. Coconut water, which I just love coconut water alone. It's so good, but coconut water, and then a pinch of high quality salt. And I always like to add in there a protein as well. So I personally utilize a collagen, so that way it evens out my blood glucose. And if I don't have access to that, I just have it with a meal. So that way I don't have to worry about that, because I know that that is also a concern for some people. But the whole science and what it does and everything else behind that, the orange juice is obviously very high in vitamin C, and vitamin C is really big for hormonal production and stress production. So the adrenal glands are naturally very high in vitamin C, and they utilize a lot of that to function well. So we want to make sure that we're giving it the fuel that it needs. And then coconut water is really high in electrolytes, like potassium. So it really supports the adrenal glands, but it also supports kidney function and your muscles as well, because your muscles and kidneys also utilize that. And then, of course, sea salt also helps with some of the trace minerals that are going there, but get a high quality sea salt for that. So that way it supports your mineral balance, thyroid, and also adrenal function. So all of those combined together are kind of like a little shot of happiness for your adrenal glands.
Yeah. So, and the cool thing about the adrenal cocktail is you can get really creative with it. I know some people will add a little cream to it to add just a little bit of fat for that, to help with that blood sugar regulation. Like you said, you can vary the juices. I like to use Redmond Real Salt, or sometimes I will use the Trace Minerals drops. I actually put Trace Minerals drops in every jug of water I have throughout the day, just to, boost that electrolyte content, and really give you those minerals. But we kind of had the idea because we noticed that a lot of people were using some of our other herbal extracts in the adrenal cocktails, just kind of like, since you're having this drink, it's a great time to add in whatever drops you have. So a lot of people will have like a liquid multivitamin that they take. They just throw that in their cocktail. So there's a lot of, and really the word cocktail is kind of a misnomer. It really should be called a mocktail. I think some people kind of are like, what, we're having a cocktail in the middle of the day? No, not exactly. But so I came up with this Adapt because I thought, a lot of these adaptogens are really great, but taking a handful of pills is really just kind of a lot. And a lot of people don't want to do that. And I thought, what if we came up with something that we could just toss into our adrenal cocktail in the middle of the day that would help with regulating some of those hormones with these adaptogenic herbs? So let's kind of switch gears and talk a little bit about the adaptogens and kind of how that also comes alongside in this picture.
Yes, for sure. So I love adaptogens. I think that they are such a cool tool, and they really support the adrenal glands by basically keeping cortisol levels and that HPA axis really even keeled. So they kind of help our body just modulate a healthier function overall. So we're able to take all of those physical, emotional, chemical stressors that we come into contact with throughout the day, and they just help our body regulate a little bit better when it comes to that. And just in terms of the elixir that you have together, I have been loving taking it in my adrenal cocktails, and is making my life so much easier because a lot of my favorite adaptogenic herbs are actually inside of there, which is amazing. Everybody talks about ashwagandha and it's great, but there's some other herbs in there that are also amazing and that I personally have suggested to people outside of ashwagandha, because some people don't do well with that alone. They need a little extra kick.
Okay, so yeah, just for informational purposes, I'm going to read through what all we have in that. So it has goji berry, ashwagandha, rhodiola, reishi, tulsi holy basil, astragalus, eleuthera, wood betony, schisandra berry, and then all of those herbs are organic. So we really put a lot of thought into really just which herbs would be really beneficial and balancing and helpful. And a lot of these are naturally anxiolytic, which means they help with anxiety, they help with stress, they help with these things that we generally think of as just like mindsets, that really are actually a physiological imbalance that's happening inside our body. Talk a little bit about that, about kind of the difference between these things that we think, oh, I just need to stop worrying, but really it's a chemical problem.
Yes, it really is. And I see this so often with the women that I work with and talk to kind of on a daily basis. And it really is this thing where they are, I don't want to say programmed, but it is a very big thing, especially online. So if you're online a lot now, you see so many people talking about mindset, and you can just affirm your way out of like this way of thinking. And affirmations are great. I do them. I said I was a big vision board girl. So I am all about the visualization and moving forward. But if you have a cortisol imbalance, a true imbalance, which a lot of us, a majority of us have, just because of the nature of life, you can't think your way out of having lower cortisol levels or regulated cortisol. It's not going to happen. So if you feel like you are the person who is going all in on all of these mindset things and you feel like you are at this cliff and you just can't get over the rest of it, it's probably because something else is definitely going on. More than likely, a lot of us need the extra support. And once we get that support, especially when it comes to adaptogenic herbs, we give our nervous system the slack to actually process what's going on. When we are still implementing those practices, you notice a huge shift in how you feel, your life, your energy, your outlook, and how you handle stress. You're no longer the person that is going to look at one thing and start crying or yelling. And I think that that's something that's really overlooked. And that just goes into kind of another rant on how women are treated and their mental health and all of that too.
And also too, maybe you can speak to some of your experience with these herbs personally, but talk a little bit about how like they make you feel, because I think some people think, you know, oh, maybe it'll be like an energy boost, or maybe I'll feel like all zen, or like they don't know exactly like what the herbs will do in their body. And honestly, like the thing we talk about is it's not that these herbs do anything specifically like to make you feel like euphoric or energy or burst of energy. What they're doing is they're freeing up your adrenals to do what they are meant to do. So you will naturally just feel a more even energy level. You'll feel less of that hairline trigger and things like that. Maybe speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that is the biggest misconception when it comes to this. I think women or anyone who starts taking them, really, they start taking them thinking that like the next day they're going to wake up with so much energy and they're going to have sustained energy forever. And it doesn't necessarily work like that, right? It's a slow process because it's not going in. It's not like a medication, right? It's not going to change your physical chemistry overnight like a medication does. This is something that is going to go in and nourish your body. It's an herb. It's not a medicine. So it's giving your body the nourishment and the support that it needs. So really, I hear less of, oh my gosh, I feel euphoric, or I have this huge burst of energy. And I hear more so like, oh, I stepped on a Lego today and I didn't respond how I normally would by throwing the whole box away. Or I noticed that it was 3:00 and I didn't need to reach for more caffeine and I actually felt awake. And then I'm able to go to sleep at night without staring at the ceiling, thinking of my to-do list. And it's those things over time that lead to a better quality of life. And that's really what these are doing. So it's not going to go in and create like this crazy shift, which I think everybody always thinks. It is going to support your body for it to do the natural thing it's supposed to do over time.
And I do want to kind of just back up a touch because, you know, we kind of joked a little bit about the people with the mindset swaps and things like that and wanting to kind of just like white knuckle it. There is definitely a balance and a nuance between both of those things together. They're both important. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater here and just say, just take these herbs and make no lifestyle changes. Like these two things and nutrition changes all work together to kind of create this balance, right?
Yes, there is no one that's better than the other. And I think that we as a society have kind of been, we all kind of expect that we can just make one change and that's going to be it. But really, it's a culmination of all of these things. Our body really is a cascade of what we do and how we treat it and the things that we bring into our life. And not even the things that we bring into our life, the things that we're also cutting out of our life too. So it really is a combination of all of those things together that is going to push you way farther on your health journey, way faster versus just relying on one thing.
And I think too, like the thing that is probably the most discouraging, especially for people coming out of maybe a more conventional outlook on wellness, is that this is not going to be an overnight fix. And there's no like answer, like, okay, just tell me which drops to take and which drink to drink and which meal to eat. Like, just give me the formula and I will do that. And then I'll be better in exactly 90 days. I think a lot of people want that. And when they hear, no, this is going to be a process and you may, you know, take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Like it might be something that's ugly and take some shifting, and maybe what you thought would work may not work the way you expected. And so, you really have to be patient with yourself and with the process. If you want a quick overnight fix, there are pharmaceutical medications that can make changes, but then with that comes a lot of other repercussions as well, because you're, really washing over a lot of underlying causes and not truly getting to the root cause of what's causing your issues. So it's not an easy path to go this direction.
No, it is not. And I always say, if you want the fast track to personal development, go on a healing journey, because there is so much personal responsibility that comes into a healing journey, especially in the holistic health world versus the conventional world. You have to really show up for yourself even when you don't want to. And that is not an easy thing. And taking that responsibility and doing the hard things over, I always tell everybody going in that healing is not an easy thing. And I know we all want it to be, but it's not. And it's something to be proud of when you are on this journey and working on yourself. And you're never going to get it 100% right all of the time. I'm 10 years into my journey and I still get stuff wrong. And that's okay too. So it really is a very hardcore way of personal development and treating yourself with grace and meeting yourself where you're at.
Having grace for yourself, I think, is really going to be the biggest piece, because there's so much just like judgment in this world. I feel like, oh, you're not eating grass fed, or, oh, you didn't buy organic produce, or, your water filter isn't perfect, or you don't have an air filter, or, there's probably mold in your house. Like, I feel like there's so much information that you can feel like if you're not doing all the things that you're somehow failing. But it's like, do the things that you can do, because I honestly feel like the stress that puts on our bodies is so much more detrimental than, eating the conventional beef and not worrying about whether it has pesticides or not, or, grabbing like non-organic milk or whatever the thing is.
Oh yeah, 100%. And this was something that I had to come to terms with. And this was like maybe a year or two into my own healing journey. And I was a purist at that point because I was so sick. So I was desperate to do anything. And I remember when I realized that my obsession with health and like this world and being perfect was way too much, when I was in California on a vacation with my husband and our friends. And we went to a vegan restaurant, and I went into the bathroom and had a panic attack because I was afraid, what are they cooking in? I'm not having any red meat, or like, I don't know what. I panicked about all of these things. And in that moment, instead of enjoying a vacation with he was my boyfriend then, my now husband, and our friends, I was having a panic attack in the bathroom. And it's like, that is what's going to get me way before I don't have red meat or like one seed oil once every couple years. Like, it's just, you cannot be perfect, and you're not going to get it right. And giving yourself that grace is going to give yourself the slack in your nervous system, because that stress is going to make it way worse.
Yes, because, if living in a world where Chick-fil-A is bad, I don't want to be right. I just have to say it.
You know what? I'm there. You cannot take my Chick-fil-A chicken biscuit away from me.
It's my secret shame. It really is. I don't care if it's cooked in seed oils. I have to have it.
I'm right there with you.
Well, this has gone by so fast, and I feel like I already have thoughts of like 4 spinoff episodes that we need to do to go into more detail on so many things. However, so much of this content and information is available, like I said, on your Instagram page, which we will link in the show notes. But this has been so fantastic and informative and helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I loved being here. This was so fun, and I'm looking forward to being back.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Naturally Noelle Show, empowering you to live a more natural life, one step at a time.